Okay, so you know how we always dive into the weird and wonderful? Well, this one's really pushing the boat out.
Oh yeah, this is deep.
You sent over this YouTube video, Human Origins and Our Aquatic Creators. That's with Clif High.
Clif High, yeah. Explorer's Guide to Sci-Fi World, I think it was called.
Right, right. So we're not just talking, you know, the usual ancient alien stuff. We're going full on creation myth, but like a really different version.
We're going way back, way before the Anunnaki.
Right. Everyone knows the Anunnaki, those guys from Sumerian texts, coming down from the sky, messing with our DNA, the whole 9 yards.
Right. Those who from the sky came, that's what Anunnaki means. A lot of people point to archaeological finds, genetic stuff, saying they were here hundreds of thousands, maybe a million years ago.
Yeah, but get this, the Numo, the ones we're talking about today, they blow that timeline out of the water.
Yeah, we're talking potentially 8 to 12 million years, at least. Maybe even older, if some of the hints in Sanskrit sources are right.
See, that's what I mean by pushing the boat out. We're not just nudging the timeline, we're in a whole different epoch.
Entirely. And what's crazy is how consistently the Numos are described, especially around the Pacific Ring of Fire. You look at the Salish, the Maori, the Melanesian cultures, it's almost uncanny.
Yeah, so what's the picture? What do these Numo look like? Because, you know, we've got our image of these, like, stately Anunnaki dudes.
We're
Right?
totally different. These guys are amphibious,
Yeah.
primarily female, like 98%. They can change gender when they need to reproduce, but it's mostly ladies.
Okay, that's wild. 98% female, so like a total matriarchy or something.
Seems like it.
Hmm.
And there's this consistent description of them as ugly, like not attractive to humans at all, very much tied to the water, with flipper-like feet. Hard to imagine them just strolling about on land.
Flippers, that's so different. No wonder they needed those, what were they called? Shoes.
Yeah, the shoes, basically flying platforms they used to get around on land.
Oh, right. And those things could get super hot. I remember that part. Like starting fires hot.
To the point that they had to make deals with locals about clearing land. Imagine that. You're just chilling in, I don't know, ancient Australia, and these amphibian aliens land their hot platforms and need to borrow some fire clearance.
So advanced tech, but still gotta barter with the locals. That's hilarious. Okay, but this is where it gets even wilder. Their creation myth about us, forget the Anunnaki designer babies, this is like a cosmic oops.
Completely. The Numo tradition says humans were an accident, one of their members messed up, and bam, here we are.
And that's where this whole idea of a debt to humanity comes from.
Exactly. They owe us big time because our very existence is a mistake they made.
Wow. Okay, so we're not chosen, we're an oops. That definitely flips the script on the whole alien creator god thing.
Big time.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder about the relationship between these two groups, the Numo and the Anunnaki. Like, were the Anunnaki trying to cover up this oops and claim credit?
Right. Like, hey, pay no attention to those amphibious folks behind the curtain. We totally are meant to do this.
Exactly. And the names they're given by those Pacific cultures are so interesting. The Numo are the star people. Anunnaki are sky people.
Star people versus sky people. That seems like more than just a language quirk.
Right, like were the Numo coming from further out? Were they connected to something beyond our immediate sky?
Okay, I'm hooked. So we've got these two potential creator groups, vastly different origin stories, different tech, different vibes. But how did they get along?
Not well. According to those indigenous traditions, they talk about contention, even a war between the Numo and the Anunnaki.
A war? That's insane. Over what? Control of Earth. Control of us.
Could be. The point is, these indigenous people saw through the Anunnaki claims. They knew the sky people weren't being straight about things.
And they resisted. Man, that Salish story of rescuing their guy from the Anunnaki spaceship, that's just epic.
It totally is. They didn't just roll over, they fought back on their own terms.
Okay, so we've got the stories, the myths, but what about actual physical evidence? Does any of this hold up archaeologically?
This is where it gets even more interesting. You find representations of the Numo all over the place. Statuettes, carvings, rock paintings on every continent except Antarctica.
Antarctica, man, that place is just a giant question mark, isn't it?
It really is. But the point is, this Numo stuff is widespread. It's not just some localized thing.
Which is different from the Anunnaki evidence, right? That's more clustered, more recent.
Exactly. More Mesopotamia, more tied to specific text interpretations. And then you've got these out-of-place artifacts, things that just don't fit the conventional timeline.
Like those Homo sapiens skeletons found in California gold mines, right? 8 million years old, supposedly.
Yeah, that's a big one. If that's accurate, it throws everything we think we know out the window.
So we've got evidence, though admittedly controversial, for both groups. But why is it that the Anunnaki are the rock stars, so to speak? Why are they all over Ancient Aliens and the Numo are like this obscure footnote?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The source makes a really interesting connection to the whole idea of hierarchy and power.
Right, the divine right to rule and all that jazz.
Exactly. The Anunnaki, with their kings and priests, they provide a model for top-down control.
Whereas the Numo, more decentralized, tribal, individualistic, they don't really offer that same kind of justification for authority.
Not at all. Hard to build a pyramid scheme, so to speak, when your creator myth is about individual agency.
And then there's that whole thing about the Catholic mitre, the hat, looking like a fish's mouth.
It's a detail that just makes you wonder, right? Like, is there a hidden Numo influence buried under layers of symbolism and dogma?
Okay, let's talk about choice. This is where it gets really personal. The source says the whole chosen people thing might be a mistranslation.
Yeah, the idea is that it was about choosing a side, choosing an allegiance, not about being inherently superior.
Like choosing to follow a specific Anunnaki, like Unan or Adon, who later became Jehovah.
Exactly. Not a divine decree, but a pact made at some point in our history.
And then you've got groups like the Salish, who basically said, nah, we're good, we'll stick with salmon and raven, thanks.
They refused to choose sides, kept their own traditions. Maybe their rugged terrain helped them stay independent.
So not everyone bought into the Anunnaki program. That's encouraging.
It is. It shows resistance, resilience, even in the face of incredible odds.
Okay, then there's this whole ancient war thing. The source paints a pretty bleak picture, with these vast deserts being the result of energy weapon battles.
It's a chilling thought, right? Those fused sand and green glass deposits in the Sahara and Gobi, they could be remnants of something truly catastrophic.
And this ties into the idea of the Anunnaki being refugees from a destroyed planet, the one that became the asteroid belt.
Right, cast down from heaven, seeking a new home, bringing their baggage and their conflicts with them.
And they set up shop in different parts of the world, Mesoamerica, Africa, the Middle East, maybe even engineering different versions of us as their workers.
That's the claim. Different factions, different agendas, leading to the diversity we see in humanity today.
Wow. And then there's that bit about the British royal family with their magic stone and weird origin story.
Tracing their lineage back to the original oops human, the one who was mentally impaired. Strange thing to celebrate, right?
It is. Talk about owning your messy past. Okay, so deep breath. We've got ancient wars, genetic engineering, competing creator gods, but it doesn't stop there. We've got inner Earth, expanding Earth.
Right. The source mentions the book Thinking and Destiny, and this idea that the planet is growing, creating internal spaces.
A honeycomb effect influencing the energy and maybe even the consciousness of different regions.
And the Dogon and Salish, they have stories about the Numo being surprised by how much Earth had grown when they came back.
So not just a static planet, but something dynamic, evolving. Man, my head's spinning.
It is a lot to take in. Then there's the flat Earth theory, which the source links to some Pentagon shenanigans around 2002, 2004.
Right, and that alleged magnetic anomaly in Antarctica. Strong enough to mess with satellites, then it all gets hushed up.
What's the play there, right? Why push a flat Earth agenda? It's a mystery.
Okay, back to tech. Liquid copper engines. That's how the Numo supposedly got around.
A glowing ball of energized copper, acting like a miniature sun, pulling their ships through space.
That's such a wild image, and so different from the Anunnaki's cyclotron tech, the whole warping space-time thing.
Right. Roswell, Cape Girardeau, Aurora, those are all potentially examples of that other type of tech, the stuff the Greys might be using.
So we're not just talking about different levels of advancement, but completely different paradigm.
Exactly. Maybe the Numo, with their millions of years head start, didn't need to rush. They could take their time, use a slower, safer method.
Which brings up the question, could we handle their tech? Could we even understand it?
There are those stories of people surviving encounters, but the mental and physical toll is supposedly immense.
And that whole thing about the underground explosion, that supposed failed attempt at reverse engineering a cyclotron device.
Not to mention the shortened lifespans reported among certain Black Ops guys working with this stuff. It's clearly not a toy.
And the source makes a good point about the different types of craft. The big Anunnaki motherships versus the smaller, maybe gray-operated ones that crash or land more frequently.
Like, are the Anunnaki hanging back, sending their drones out to do the dirty work?
Okay, last but not least, the return of the Numo and the possibility of deep-water civilizations.
The source seems to think the original Numo aren't physically here right now. Maybe they gave us souls as their way of paying off that debt.
But the Anunnaki, they might still be lurking around, getting old and cranky.
The Numo promised to come back when we discovered who we were. That's a big one. What does that even mean?
Right. And then you've got these hints about deep water civilizations,
Ah,
the fishermen stories, the Navy sonar recordings, the damaged undersea equipment.
and it all makes sense if you think about the Numo. They're aquatic. Maybe they have cousins down there, an entire civilization we've never even glimpsed.
And that recent meteorite incident over the Olympics, it all feels connected somehow.
The huge effort to retrieve it, the minimal recovery, the eyewitnesses saying it wasn't a meteorite at all, but a spaceship.
And then there's the whole nature of space itself. It's not empty, it's full of stuff, energy, maybe even information.
The Russians say it's like sand or dust, and water can hold information. Maybe those two things are more connected than we realize.
So imagine we find these aquatic cousins. How would we react? Would we welcome them? Or would we repeat history, like we did with the Mesoamerican civilizations?
It depends, right? If we're stuck in an Anunnaki hierarchical mindset, it could get ugly.
But if we embrace the Numo perspective, the idea of accidental creation interconnectedness, maybe we could have that cousin party after all.
It's a choice. Maybe the most important one we'll ever make as a species.
Oh, and just so you know, that raven on Clif High's icon, that's the raven from the Salish Numo mythology.
It all ties together.
Well, folks, we've been down a rabbit hole and a half today. Numo, Anunnaki, deep water civilizations, the nature of space. It's a lot to process.
The point is to question, to explore, to be open to new possibilities. There's so much we don't know, especially when it comes to our own past.
And who knows what else is waiting to be discovered? What mysteries lie beneath the waves waiting for us to discover who we are? That's the real challenge, isn't it?
It is. It really is.